Hey everyone, Ryan Dunford here with Team Losi Racing, one of the product managers here, and wanted to introduce one of our new vehicles. This is the Team Losi Racing 8X, X being for next generation. It's kind of a throwback from the old JRX, Double X, Triple X days, and also it seems to kind of be a theme these days, so just to note that it's a new generation. We really wanted people to know that this is an entirely new vehicle from the ground up. The only real thing that's used in this still is we wanted to reuse our differentials, and the primary reason for that is our differentials, a lot of folks on the market feel are a very good piece already, and so we kind of wanted to build off of that. So the diff internals, the diff cases, and in some cases like the center out drives, the rear ring and pinion, the center diff gear or spur gear, they're still the same part. All that was metric previously, so we left all that alone. Didn't want to ruin something that was already working well. Obviously you can see got a new body on it. We updated the wing to be IFMAR legal. You can see our general design schema though still remains unchanged, so that you do know this is an 8-platform product. But what we'll do is we'll go ahead and pull the body off here and start talking about some of the differences. So you can see right off the bat the chassis configuration's 100% different. We went away from having the 2 servos in the front with the bell crank linkage to the back because a lot of people felt that there was slop involved in that and you weren't getting as consistent throttle and brake feel. One of the big things we did here with the new vehicle was this new center diff brace, which is also the mount for the servo for the brake and throttle, so that you keep all of this together. There's no slop in the system and it stays very consistent over the run. One thing we also did with that is make it so that essentially you pop the throttle ball cup off, take 4 screws out, and this whole system in the center comes right off, leaving all of your brake linkage and everything intact. And you have your diff in your hand. You either change diff oil for diff maintenance, maybe you want to change a spur gear, check your brakes out, anything like that between races, and just makes it super easy to service and get to. You can see in the vehicle we went to, this is our battery case. You can use either what's become a pretty traditional 2S LiPo pack, or you can fit this way a lithium-ion battery that we're working on. A lot of people feel that technology's coming a long way, and it seems to be a little bit safer technology. And then back here now you have the switch, nice and easily accessible from either the bottom or the top of the car, from outside the body, and your receiver box that's plenty big enough to fit in any good sized receiver that's out there today. From the chassis setup, we've got an all new motor mount setup. It does come with the extra long motor mount on the one side as a chassis stiffener. You can see in front of that we got a new fuel tank, which is lower and wider to keep the CG a little lower on the vehicle. The old tank came up about an extra 7-ish millimeters, whereas this one's considerably lower. We do still use our tried and true air filter system. It's been changed here. Just to bring it up real quick, the car is entirely metric now. So things like the air cleaner, while the old one will work fine, the new one is exactly the same, except it uses a metric screw up here. We've got a whole new drag link bell crank setup. So we've moved the servo saver to the top so it's easier access. We now include a polyurethane elastomer bushing that you can use, as well as a spring that you can use. You've got a drag link setup, so there's virtually, let me lift this up, pretty much no slop in the front now. And you've got different Ackerman locations. In the front you've got arm, a given arm that comes off of the spindle there. We're going to sell multiple different arms that'll be available. Also, going back real quick, one thing to mention about this servo mount setup is it is a floating servo. So the servo is not even attached to the chassis. You can see under there, there's daylight. It's literally just attached to the center diff, so you don't have to worry about the chassis heating it up or anything. To continue forward here, let's just talk about the shocks. We completely went through the front and rear shocks of the vehicle. The material for the X-rings changed. It's a more silicone-based material, so they don't expand quite as much. They last even longer than they used to last, let less dirt through. You'll see that be a running change because we still use the same X-ring from the 4.0 kit to this kit. The vehicle comes with 4mm shock shafts with the vehicle. We will also be selling a 3.5mm shock shaft conversion set. We found a lot of people on the bumpier style tracks like the smaller size shock shafts. Just tends to keep the car more flat and goes through the bumps a little bit better. We also changed the thread pitch for the shocks here for the shock adjustment nut, so that it's a finer adjustment, because we're finding that on this car, being more refined as it is, even quarter turns make a bigger difference. We shortened up the shock cap on this car, you'll see, so that we have more room to get the cars lower, because a lot of tracks people are liking a lower vehicle these days. We also updated the shock cups. They're a much taller cup as far as spring engagement, but you'll also notice they have a screw on them now to keep the shock cups from ejecting themselves or pulling off to the side. Also on the front end, you'll see the sway bar is captured by 2 collars on each side, and you'll notice some different screws in here. This front cap now comes off. Basically, you take off the 4, 6 screws, and usually the one camber link side, and then the cap comes off. You can pull your front diff out from the front with everything staying intact. The tower is actually held on behind this with 2 screws to keep it all intact. Continuing on with the front end, you can see here we've got an updated spindle and carrier design here. Got less scrub radius. We've got 20 degrees of caster in the car. We've got 2 degrees of trail, and we've got some incline in it now. So a lot of stuff going on in the front end. We have a narrower front pivot. So essentially what all this equaled was a longer front arm on the vehicle. Really helps the balance from front to rear of the vehicle, we found, and it really helps the front end get through the bumps without bouncing the front end around so much. From that, we'll move to the back end of the car. The back end of the car, we've got a much taller tower, much longer shocks than we had before, because we have some extra adjustments in the rear. So we needed the extra long shock to be able to do all of that. What you'll see is we've got a lower pivot in the rear and narrower, and then we've got a pivot pin that's out further on the hub in the hub side now. So both of those equate to a longer arm as well, which again helps just keep the car more flat through the big bumps, things of that nature. The hub also has the ability to move up and down, kind of like the option hub that we offer for the 4.0. You can now do that stock on the vehicle. So with changing of the pivot and the hub variation, we allow a lot of different camber link location positions now, just for all the different tracks and everything that are out there. And let's go really quick. I forgot to bring up, so the clutch looks identical, for the most part is identical to the clutch we've run for some time now. It's still a 4-shoe clutch. The only difference with the clutch that will ship with the 8X is that the pin changed, so that the pin is a metric pin, which means the flywheel changed. You can still use all your old clutch stuff on there. You just need to make sure that whatever you get for the flywheel and the pins that you get match each other. Other than that, the shoes are the same, the clutch bells are the same, the buildup of it identical. And then the other thing you'll notice, if we go to the bottom here, is you'll notice the arms are a flat, solid arm on the rear now. Just allows it to get over bumps and makes it even stronger. And then on the top, you'll notice we include the plastic inserts on front and rear arms. We will also sell carbon inserts as an option part on the front and rear of the vehicle. But really the whole premise behind doing all of this work was to make a car that's just easier to drive in general. It's faster, it's smoother, it handles the more bumpy tracks we're getting on these days, and just has a lot more adjustment so you can get it working for yourself. But I mean, for the most part, the other thing to just briefly mention is you'll see in the vehicle now, we did move the diff over enough to now fully equalize both the front and rear drive shaft. So the car is now fully equal front and rear. We still did it in our own unique style where we still left this over here because that allows us, while we widened the chassis more because it seemed to make it more stable, it still allowed us to keep it a little bit narrower than most of the other vehicles out there. Just a couple last bits to touch on. We did change the bearings in all four corners of the car to use two 8x16 bearings, so a larger ball bearing. It also makes it so that you can use the included CVA drive shafts as well as the optional will come out universal drive shafts without changing out bearings or hubs or any parts. I did forget to mention the rear diff case also splits now this way in the center, so you take off some screws from the top here and this whole portion moves up and you can pull the diff right out from the back. And then again, the car is all metric. And this is the new TLR 8X. Hope you've enjoyed the video and have a good day.